Well, there is a breaking news coming in at this point in time as far as the Ram Mandir issue is concerned, and as far as Supreme Court, it will be deciding the case whether it could be referred to a constitution bench or not. So this is a massive development that has taken place over the Ram Mandir, the Babri Masjid issue, where you have the Supreme Court to decide whether the case could be referred to a constitution bench or not. This is a big development that has taken place, and on Friday, we believe this big hearing on the Ayodhya case will take place. Nalini is joining us on the phone line with more on this. Yes, Nalini, give us the details.
Yes, well, the Babri Masjid land dispute case has now been listed for 28th of this month, and this comes after the Supreme Court had last time around reserved the order on the particular issue of whether or not this case should be referred to a 5-judge constitution bench or not. So it seems likely that on Friday this week, that is on the 28th of September, the Supreme Court 3-judge bench will pronounce the order on whether or not this particular issue, this long-standing issue of the Babri Masjid demolition, should be referred to a 5-judge constitution bench or not. If it decides to do so, then we can expect a 5-judge constitution bench that will be headed by the new Chief Justice, Justice Ranjan Gogoi, will start hearing the case on an urgent basis, and we can finally expect the day-to-day hearing in the Babri Masjid case to actually begin.
All right, Nalini, so that means as far as this case is concerned, it is just for the Supreme Court to decide on the constitution bench or not, because is this not a verdict likely that will take place on Friday?
Absolutely. In fact, the only issue on which the Supreme Court had reserved the order was whether or not this case should be referred to a constitution bench. There were several arguments being made from the side of the petitioners as well as the respondents in this case that this was merely a land dispute and therefore it should be decided as a land dispute. But at the same time, a lot of parties in these cross appeals had also come forth with the argument stating that their basic right to worship was being violated because the Babri Masjid in that particular piece of land was in fact demolished. So that is why the Supreme Court heard extensive arguments on whether or not this was just merely a land dispute or whether there was a larger question of the constitution involved in this entire case, considering that there are multiple parties that have approached the Supreme Court seeking different sorts of relief in this case, even after the Allahabad High Court judgment. So after hearing all of the parties in the case extensively, the Supreme Court reserved a verdict on the issue of whether or not a constitution bench will consider any crucial questions relating to the violation of fundamental rights of these parties or not, and that is why they will decide whether or not this particular issue should be referred to a 5-judge bench to decide what should ultimately happen to the entire Babri Masjid case and whether or not the verdict given by the Allahabad High Court holds some value.
So the focus will be on Ayodhya, the Ram Mandir land dispute. As Nalini was pointing out, it is not really a verdict, but the Supreme Court will be taken into focus as far as this case, whether or not it will be referred to a constitution bench or not. Now, this will be decided come Friday, as the focus will be on this long-standing dispute. Nalini, as you were pointing out, because when this case was taken up by the Supreme Court, it said that it will only deal with the matters pertaining to the land dispute only. When it comes to the worshipping side, when it comes to the devotee side, it doesn't matter on a bigger picture, but what really matters is just that land dispute that we are talking about. We will just reconnect that line with Nalini, our legal correspondent there. So on Friday, this is a big development that has taken place. We're expecting a hearing that will take place on the Ram Mandir Babri Masjid issue. And on this, there will be decided whether or not this case should be referred to a constitution bench or not. Now, this hearing will take place on Friday. Nalini is back with us on the phone line. So Nalini, as you were pointing out, this is an issue just pertaining to the land dispute between the warring parties. It doesn't have to do anything when it comes to the worshippers, the devotees there. It is just the matter that the Supreme Court will be deciding pertaining to the land dispute.
Well, Amita, these were the two arguments that were being made before the Supreme Court three-judge bench. The question was whether this is merely a land dispute between all of these parties, or if there was a larger question involved in this particular case, and whether through the demolition of this particular mosque called the Babri Masjid, was the fundamental rights of to worship of a particular section of the community actually violated. So the arguments being made by the parties so far were on this particular issue, whether or not there was a need to set up a constitution bench to hear this case from the very beginning, because there are multiple parties that have approached the court and they are asking for multiple relief to the extent that there are cross appeals in this particular case, which means that petitioners in one particular appeal.
All right, Nalini, stay on with us. Zafaryab Jilani of the Babri Masjid Action Committee is with us on the phone line. Mr. Jilani, what do you have to say as far as this development is concerned? Because Friday will be an important day for you as well, being a party there, because the Supreme Court will be deciding whether or not to refer this case to the Constitution bench.
You see, it is a routine matter that Supreme Court is likely to deliver its opinion, because the Supreme Court was informed that the judgment and observation made in 1994 judgment of Ismail Farooqi case was contrary to other larger bench Supreme Court judgments. So it is better that this matter should be referred to larger bench. On that point, the Supreme Court heard arguments of both the sides and has reserved the order on 20th of July. So it is only on that matter that the order is likely to be delivered.
Okay.
Whether the matter should be referred for this particular purpose to the larger bench or not.
We'll see what the Supreme Court decides come Friday, whether or not this case will be referred to a constitution bench or not. Mr. Jilani, thank you very much for your perspective.